The Rams took down the Saints on Thursday night. This game pretty much went the way it was supposed to go. Okay, there was an obvious disadvantage that the Saints were in coming into this game, and that was Dennis Allen. This dude is one of the worst head coaches in the National Football League, and he was looking like a junior varsity football coach out there compared to Sean McVay, who's like a varsity level coach. And this game, it looked close. It was a one-possession game at one point because the Saints had came back. They got a little bit of momentum. They got a stop late. But oddly enough, Dennis Allen decides to go for an onside kick, even though his defense had way more than enough time to try to get another stop. The coaching decisions by Dennis Allen are some of the dumbest in the history of the Saints organization. Not just that, but his defense got shredded tonight. And remind you, not only is he the head coach, but he also calls the plays on defense. And Sean McVay calls the plays for the Rams offense. So when it comes to X's and O's and pure execution, Sean McVay completely outclassed and outmatched Dennis Allen tonight. Derek Carr didn't play bad. Chris Olave let him down like twice on third down. This just was one of those games where you look at the coaching advantage favoring the Rams. It was pretty obvious that they were going to win this game. Pretty obvious. I was expecting this thing to be a blowout. I thought the Rams were going to win 30-17. That was my prediction coming into this game. But, I said if the Saints played well, it could be 30-24. The Rams offense, imagine how good they're going to be next season. When the offensive line improves, Puka Nacua improves, Matthew Stafford, he can find a way to stay healthy. This is a team that is equipped to win and compete for championships for the next 4 to 5 years. The way they drafted, when at one point coming into this year, we thought they were going to be terrible. You got to look at Sean McVay with what he's done with this young team, with all these rookies and young studs, and actually have him as the front runner for Coach of the Year. Who else is doing a better job? Like, yes, the Browns look good and Kevin Stefanski has exceeded expectations with all the injuries, but the expectations for the Browns this year was that they were good enough to be a playoff team. Not everybody was expecting the Rams to be a playoff team. A good amount of people thought that they were going to go, 7-9 or 7-10. You didn't even know if Matthew Stafford could stay healthy. I was one of them. New Orleans, this team continues to be the biggest underachiever in the NFL. And I didn't have high expectations for the Saints coming into this year. All right, and I've barely talked about them because there's nothing really to talk about. The same issues that they had last year are present this year. You just have a slightly better quarterback. Derek Carr, tonight, he was okay. Well, I'll say he was pretty good. I ain't going to do him like that. He did make some pretty good plays, but he just wasn't good enough early on to start this game. And the offense, they got a little bit too hot when it was already out of reach. And then Dennis Allen, he kicked it away with the stupid onside kick decision. And then the way that he went about doing the onside kick too was a little weird. Like, this team, most people thought they could win 10 games. And maybe they could win a playoff game. And when you're in the NFL's weakest division, you would have thought that with how much talent was on this roster this year, despite the injuries, they would have been good enough to win more games than Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. Or even the Atlanta Falcons. This team is pathetic under Dennis Allen. If you would have had Sean McVay coaching the Rams this year, do you know how good the Saints could be? They possibly will be the best team in the NFC. Dennis Allen, if he was coaching this Rams team, despite the studs that they have that are young, they wouldn't be as good as what they are right now under him. Dennis Allen, when he took over this Saints franchise as the head coach, there was never really a lot of room to be optimistic about this guy. He was already a failed head coach with the Raiders. The Raiders situation, people try to make it an excuse for him that, it's the Raiders, they're such a terrible organization. When you get hired to coach a terrible organization, you should at least be able to rebuild it. That's what you're supposed to do. Look at what Dan Campbell did with the Detroit Lions. New Orleans fans will tell you that they were a little optimistic. But that's just what comes with normally being a fan. It's not like anybody wants their team to go into the year and just be terrible. Everybody has to have a little bit of hope. But most realistic Saints fans, and even the ones that were a little overly optimistic, understood that Dennis Allen was not a good head coach. It doesn't take you 3 times to figure out what somebody is. Somebody shows you who they really are the first time they do something. And we saw how Dennis Allen's first stint went with the Raiders. It was terrible. There's not a lot of second chance head coaches that work out. The only ones that work out are the ones that have proven resumes of winning. Former MVP appearances, or not MVP appearances, but Super Bowl appearances, like Sean Payton, Doug Peterson, even Mike McCarthy. These are the second chance head coaches that you should look to hire, not ones that have failed and ones that didn't even have a winning season. So the Rams take down the Saints tonight. The way this impacts the NFC playoffs, the Rams are in firm control of that last playoff seed in the NFC. Meanwhile, for the Saints, they dropped to 7-8. If the Bucs lose to Jacksonville, next week could possibly be the NFC South Championship. But I don't even know if the Saints would be good enough to win that. Meanwhile, for the Rams, they probably are going to end up getting into the playoffs. With the way Sean McVay has coached this year, this probably is his best coaching job up to this point of his young career. Nobody really had high expectations for the Rams. I mean, Matthew Stafford is one of the best pure passers in the league. Some of the throws that he was making off his back foot with pressure in his face, like not even having to step into it. He's been so underrated for so many years. And now the fact that he's on a team that always is in big games in the national spotlight with a solid supporting cast and good coaching, the more you just watch this dude, the more you're like, damn, like, how was Detroit not able to win with Matthew Stafford? Like, this dude is fantastic. He arguably looks like a top 5 quarterback up to this point of the season. And for the Detroit Lions, I guess it says a lot more about their previous regime and how much Dan Campbell means to this franchise now. Like, did you know that the Detroit Lions are raising ticket prices? Like, that's crazy. For the Rams, man, this is a really surprising season. They got to give Coach of the Year to Sean McVay, because there were people thinking that this team was possibly going to be in the tank for Caleb sweepstakes or something like that. This is why good coaching matters. Talent doesn't really mean much in the NFL if you don't have great coaching. And Sean McVay, this is masterclass.